Welcome to A Little Too Quiet, the Ferndale Library podcast, brought to you by Friend the Ferndale Library. My name is Damon, and I am a youth librarian here, excited to talk about Doctor Who. And I am joined today by...
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm a circulation assistant. How you doing?
And I'm Mary Graham. I am also a youth librarian, and I would like to say, dun dun dun.
We're gonna get sued.
Oh, this is gonna be a fun podcast. We're also joined by...
Hello, I'm Jeff. I'm the marketing coordinator here at the library, and ready to have some fun.
All right. So, yeah, I've been recently rekindling my love for Doctor Who, and after having yet another chat with Mary Graham about it, we decided that, this would make a fun podcast to talk about it. So I kind of want to start this with talking about our individual experiences with Doctor Who. Like, how much have you seen? What got you into it? Where did it start? And I can start real quick. I was fairly late to the Doctor Who game. About 2013 is when I started. Matt Smith Doctor was on the air at the time, and he had just recorded his last main episode he was in. I had access to Netflix for the first time in my life, and so other than, I think my parents had it when we did it with the DVDs for 6 months or something, but digital Netflix for the first time. And so at the time, all the episodes were on there, and a friend of mine was like, you need to watch this. I know the kind of thing you like. You will love this. And I'm like, I'm more a fantasy person, not a sci-fi person, but I'll try. And you know what? I have never looked back. I started with the revival episodes, so starting with the 2005 episode Rose, which is where I'm guessing a lot of you have started, but who knows? We'll see. And I watched the first 8 seasons before falling off for a while, and now I'm, like I said, getting back into it and trying to see if I can make it further this time around. So, Liz, how about you?
About the same. I heard about it through friends. So I started off with Eccleston, worked my way through into Tennant, watched Matt Smith, but kind of fell off in the Matt Smith years. I appreciated what he was doing as the Doctor, but he didn't grab me like Eccleston and Tennant did. I watched some of the episodes with Capaldi. Haven't watched anything with Jodie yet. I'm really excited to. I've heard nothing but good things. But then I kind of started working back into the catalog. I watched the terrible, terrible American-made movie with Paul McGann, which is such a shame.
I know people who adore not the movie itself, but Paul McGann as H.
He's such a good Doctor.
Yeah.
I'm so glad they finally gave him. He's been doing a lot of the audio dramas.
Big Finish,
yep. He's been doing the audio dramas. They've reintroduced him through comics and a lot of the books. It's been such a great revival for him. Obviously, I love Sylvester McCoy. I love really going back. So,
I first heard about Doctor Who because I had an elementary school teacher who was a big fan, and the background of her desktop computer was a still from the Agatha Christie episode in season 4 of David Tennant sitting in the chair, and he's reminiscing about I was going through the forest trying to save whatever from a computer, and there were archers there. And I remember, I didn't watch the show yet, but I remember someone in my class asked her ma'am, who is this man on your TV on your computer screen? And she said, oh, it's from a TV show I really like, and the main character is an alien, and he regenerates every so often, and they get a new actor, and this is the guy right now, but it's about to regenerate and about to be a new actor. And we were like, oh, huh. And then when I got to high school, which would have been maybe just a year or two before you got really into it, Damon, a lot of my friends and I were really into Sherlock.
I mean, I think
Who's among us?
That's relatable.
I think we all had that phase.
I had
or
that
survived
phase.
through that phase.
I had that phase, but Andrew Scott.
Here's the thing. Andrew Scott won out of that cast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
he won his career. I was still really happy when Fleabag came along, and Andrew Scott's cultural recognition became Hot Priest instead of Moriarty, though. All that to say, there was a lot of overlap between people who were on Tumblr in the early 2010s, people who enjoyed Sherlock, people who enjoyed Doctor Who. I used to fall into all of those categories. And so that's how I started watching Doctor Who, and I feel like I had to chase it around streaming services, trying to get it. BBC America ran it sometimes. So actually mostly I would record marathons on BBC America. to try to catch up on it. So I caught up with it. I also started with the Russell T Davies sort of reboot. I remember convincing one of my friends. I had already watched Rose and most of the first season with Chris Eccleston, National Treasure, as the Ninth Doctor. And I was like cajoling one of my friends into watching the pilot with me so that I could get them into it as well. And I think they went off and watched the pilot on their own. And they were like, I don't know about these very fake looking monsters. And I was like, Pat, trust me, keep going. And they watched the second episode, which is the one where he takes her to the heat death of Earth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Pat called me back and was like, I take it back. Right. And I similar thing. I caught up entirely with Matt Smith. I watched the 50th anniversary special live. Like we only had one television in the house where I grew up, and I didn't even have to negotiate. I just politely asked, and my parents were like, "Sure. We made you watch The West Wing with us when you were in 7th grade, so sure, you can have this for your your funny little alien show."
Just Mary Graham football tackling her family out of the way to get to Doctor Who on the couch.
And so, but then I moved to college and I didn't have a TV in college. So Peter Capaldi's first season was airing on BBC America. I didn't have any streaming services. And the same friend who called me back and was like, wait, you were right, the show is actually good, lived on a floor below me, and they did have a TV, so we watched a couple episodes together. But then like freshman year of college happened and we got really busy, and so I fell off. But Doctor Who's always been a comfort show for me. And when I was wrapping up my graduate degree in Boston, I was like, ooh, I'm gonna start at the beginning of Capaldi and go forward. I'm going to do that when I come home on spring break. Great. So go to the local library, get season 8 out on DVD. 2 days later, World Health Organization declares a pandemic. My parents and I are home in the same place all the time, and I do not have a laptop with a DVD player. So, and they're just not, they support my weird alien show, but they themselves were not interested in partaking. I did convince them to watch Schitt's Creek with me, though. I was Liz talking about football tackling people out of the way. I was like, so what you need to understand is that the finale of Schitt's Creek is happening, and I'm going to be watching the finale of Schitt's Creek in the living room. So, yeah.
Don't make plans that evening. I'm taking the TV.
Yeah. So I actually have only seen up to a bit of Peter Capaldi with Jenna Coleman. I hear their dynamic is insane making, which is like, this is something that I want to talk about, is the like crazy making relationship dynamics on this show. Because I believe that all sci-fi should have the same budget as my high school drama club. And I did not go to a school that believed in funding the arts. So like, I am here for entirely practical effects, rubber monsters, and just the most heartfelt, emotional dynamics that you can possibly think of, that also make you want to go, ah.
I love that so much.
Yeah, definitely.
I became aware of Doctor Who through a bit of cultural zeitgeist osmosis. It was the theme song. And I had seen clips, I think, of Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor, with his hair and the opening and the timey-wimey weird color psychedelic. There's a little bit of psychedelia going on in the early Doctor Who, which we'll maybe
100%.
get to.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I definitely, I know that we'll circle back and talk about actors. But for me, part of the zeitgeisty thing was I was such a Shakespeare nerd. And so David Tennant to me was Hamlet.
Yeah.
And Richard II. And so I was like, oh, they let the funny, or actually not the funny, the very serious Shakespeare man on TV. And he's funny?
Yeah.
Interesting. And so there was like a lot of, to this day when I get sad, I'm like, David Tennant Shakespeare Marathon, here we go.
David Tennant is how I got into modern Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I don't think that's an original answer. But another reason I got into modern Doctor Who, and this is also not an original answer for a library marketer, is in fact the library. When I used to be on the circulation desk, lots of patrons I noticed were because I don't think our collection was even as good as it even is now as it was then, but they were interlibrary loaning lots of old episodes in, and you just, as you do, you chit chat with the patrons, and a Doctor Who fan is eager to chat about their love for Doctor Who, and I just started getting lots from the patrons. So I'm happy to say that it's a library answer as to why I started to learn about Doctor Who.
That makes me so happy. And patrons, this lets you know it cuts both ways, because some people are like, oh, what do you do for your job? And I'm like, I lovingly badger people. I don't really do this to patrons, but I do it definitely to my coworkers. I'm like, I just annoy people until they try out the same things that I like, and then they also like them, which frankly is what we do on this podcast. Is that the next couple of author interviews we have coming up are me saying, Jeff, can I talk to this person? Can you make that happen? And I'm going to talk to cool people, and you're going to be like, oh, dang, that person's cool. I'll go read this book that Mary Graham likes. You know, that's our master plan. But it also works the other way. You can come in and be like, so Doctor Who.
So I want to talk. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can gently bully us into reading some stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember one patron being really taken with, smitten with, fascinated by, specifically, Matt Smith. And what
I don't understand what his face is doing, but it is doing something
There's
intriguing.
some sorcery there.
His face is so unique, though. You can't not continue
That's the
thinking
thing,
about
is he
it.
does look like an alien.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all due respect. I know he listens to the pod. Can
you imagine?
But the thing is, like, if anyone listens to the pod, it's Georgia. Hi, Georgia. That's David Tennant's wife.
It would be Georgia.
Who we met working on Doctor Who. The thing about David Tennant is that no one has managed to fanboy like that man has. This will not be news to anyone with probably passing interest in Doctor Who, but he was a fan as a child, because Doctor Who is one of the longest running television series in history. Not continuously, but it is. So he watched it as a child, loved it, grew up, got to be on the show. The man who is now his father-in-law was the 5th Doctor.
Yeah.
And he met his wife working on the show.
They're so
Wasn't one of his kids also on the show at one point, too?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Has his oldest been on it?
I want to say it was his oldest.
His
I know
oldest
his
has been on
oldest was
Good
just
Omens.
Good Omens, and I think also recently Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Or Dance the Dragons or whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
I know Damien has a lot to get to, but I
Sorry.
want to say real quickly that as I was learning from the circulation desk, the bits and pieces I was getting is that this is an alien who periodically looks different, who fights wobbly robots that someone is happy to tell me are called Daleks or something.
The Daleks.
Daleks, thank you.
Yeah.
And this is...
They don't even wobble that much.
Right.
It's the time that's wobbly.
Yep. That's right.
Maybe the Cybermen, the early Cybermen. They were pretty wild.
And doesn't fight, but outsmarts.
No, sometimes he fights.
Sometimes he fights.
Sometimes.
Yeah. He just fights with screwdrivers rather than actual weapons. Well, we've talked about a lot of very specific Doctor Who things here, but I feel like I should just give a quick rundown for the unacquainted. So, because Doctor Who is wild and confusing. It started as a serialized British TV show back in 1963 and ran a full 26 seasons until 1989. I'll add that some of those episodes have been lost into time because BBC had the habit of recording over old episodes in their archives, and so some of them are just gone, or we just have the audio from them, and it's pretty great. There was a TV movie made in 1996 and then a revival from 2005 onward. Most of what we're talking about today is in that revival period, which started with the 9th Doctor, which getting to that in a second, but modern Doctor Who really starts from there. It did take a lot of inspiration from the original show. A lot of the lore did carry over in its own way, so it's very cool.
Doctor Who loves nothing so much as contradicting its own canon.
Oh, 100%.
And also, dear listener, for those of you who don't know what's going on, you are getting the prime experience of someone being introduced to Doctor Who. No one sits you down and says anything beyond, oh, there's an alien, and every time he dies, he doesn't die. He just gets a new face, or they get a new face now. We get to talk about gender. It's going to be fun. But, like, they just start talking at you, and you slowly figure out what Doctor Who means.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah. And, the revival does a pretty good job of showing, not telling a lot of those things. Like, the first time he regenerates, which regenerating is when he gets a new face, a new body, and he's on his... What number is he on now?
I think we're up to 13.
15.
Okay,
technically, but if you're going with the official numbers.
Yeah, David Tennant's 14.
14.
Yeah.
He's 10 and he's 14, and then Shutigawa is 15.
15.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, so whenever he's near the end of his life, whether it be a natural means or through harm, then he's able to take on a new body, which is pretty cool. So if you've ever heard anybody say things like the 10th Doctor is my favorite or the 12th Doctor is my favorite, that is why. He also almost always travels with a companion or multiple companions. And a lot of those companions always seem to be from present day for the viewer Britain. Not always, but a lot of the time.
Less so in classic Who.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's actually something that I would really love to see modern Who or new Who, as we sometimes call it, like bring back.
That'd be really cool.
Like there was like a companion who was from like 18th century Scotland.
Ooh.
And I think like he was like, his name was Jamie.
Yeah.
He was a teenager. Diana Gabaldon very famously named the hero of the Outlander
Right.
books after him.
Oh, what was the one companion? I cannot think of her name, but she was like the wild woman. I think she traveled with 7.
I don't know, but like that's a cool thing that I would like to see him do.
That would be really cool.
Although as a viewer, I do appreciate seeing from the modern era, because the companion very often is for the viewer how we, the viewers, would experience traveling with the Doctor.
Yeah, they're the audience stand-in.
And so, like, how they're feeling just because of where they're from, the time they're from, and all of that. But yeah, no, the show in general just toes that line between goofy, cheesy sci-fi, but also complex world building.
The most heartfelt thing you've ever heard.
And convoluted storylines, especially when you're in your Moffat era. So,
gosh.
yes. That all being said, I want to talk about our favorite Doctors. We brought up a few of them already, but who is your favorite Doctor, and why are they your favorite Doctor?
Ooh. Well, Eccleston, because first Doctor. I mean, it's kind of hard. You remember your first Doctor, but I really liked like the anger and the grittiness that he was bringing into the series. But he had that softness and that compassion that really showed through when he's in his travels. 10 was really wacky, but could be extremely serious, and that's where really his Shakespearean training's coming through with Tennant, which was great. But deep cut, some of my favorite Doctors were only ever featured on the Red Nose Day special.
So
Rowan
can you explain
Atkinson.
this? What is the Red Nose Day special?
So Red Nose Day is basically a charity thing that runs in England, right? And they do like little skit shows to raise money. And they did this one with Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor. So for all of our dear listeners out there, Mr. Bean as Doctor Who. And then Jonathan Pryce is the Master. But not just Rowan Atkinson as the Doctor. We also had Richard Grant, Jim Broadbent, Hugh Grant, and Joanna Lumley all as the Doctor in this one episode. And it was the best thing ever. It is so silly, so ridiculous. And you're just like, yeah, I can get behind this. Also, Paul McGann. The movie might be terrible, but he was a fantastic Doctor and really made what he was given work.
That was the 96 special 8th Doctor?
Yes.
Okay.
That's why they keep bringing him back for the audios.
Yeah, he was so good. And like Sylvester McCoy, as short his stint in that movie was, really again worked really well with what he was given with that script. So
I guess after saying all of that, Liz, you seem to like a lot of them. So maybe I should have asked instead, is there a Doctor you dislike?
And not even a severe dislike. Matt Smith never connected with me the way he has with other people. I don't know, he just didn't grab me. Like, I gave him a fair shot. I watched all of his seasons, and it was just like, yeah, this is fine, but I think I care for, Tennant better. But that's just me.
As of right now, my favorite Doctor is 9, is Chris Eccleston. And not just because he was the first person I saw do the role, but because every time I go back and start from the beginning, I go, God, that he's got it. National treasure, Christopher Eccleston. And I know he didn't have a great experience on the show, and I am sorry. And he was also quite ill as well when he was filming it, and I'm sorry for all of that, but I really consider his performance such a gift because part of the lore of the sort of Doctor Who reboot is that there's been this big war on the Doctor's home planet and that he's basically now the last of his alien species. And Chris Eccleston gives that performance.
Oh, yeah.
And sort of brings this series back to life with such aplomb. And does fantastic work opposite Billie Piper.
Oh yeah.
And just my favorite episode is the two-parter, the Are You My Mummy?
Yes.
The Doctor dances.
Yes.
And his performance in that is just
so
exquisite.
good.
I mean, the whole season, he's absolutely batting 1,000. Soft spot for David Tennant, of course. I have a feeling that once I get through all of the Capaldi episodes, Peter Capaldi's probably going to be pretty far up there. He seems pretty fabulous, and I've I've contacted some friends and been like, can you just give me like the highlights of Capaldi's stuff so that I can see? Because they were like, what you need to understand about 12's run is that it has some of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever written and some of the absolute worst episodes of Doctor Who ever written. And what you need to understand, dear listeners, that this is true of every season of Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's very true.
So, yeah, what about you, Damon? Who's your favorite?
Ooh, so I'm super basic. Of course, I love Tenet. He was my very first experience with regeneration.
Oh, very
And my friend didn't really prep me for that. So when suddenly the main character was transforming into a new person, I was like, no.
You were like Rose in the Christmas special, who's like, can you change back?
100%.
Right.
And like you were saying, Mary Graham, I loved Eccleston. He was so good. And he really got me into the show. He got me so excited about it and wanted to see what came next. But then one of Tennant's very first lines he did in his special was a Lion King quote. And I was like, you know what? I am on board. This man is goofy. He's fun. He's adorable. And he really just embodies that whimsical nature of the Doctor. But that being said, I really do love Eccleston. I super love Matt Smith. It took me a lot longer to get used to him, I guess would be the way of saying it. But once I did, I really like him as well.
I think that 11 is often the casualty of some unfortunate writing choices and just like way too convoluted plot, because I love, like, 11's the character, fascinating. Matt Smith doing a great job. I think a lot of my favorite Matt Smith episodes are when Clara comes on as a companion, and that's partially because I enjoy the continuity of Clara being with 11 for a substantial amount of time, and then also sticking around for 12. And at the same time, like, I have to ignore a lot of the, like, really plotty stuff that happens. Also, even though I really like Amy, I don't like a lot of her plot points.
I'm actually the opposite. I don't like Amy very much. And we'll get into that when we talk about companions. But, yes.
That seems to be the thing. You either really, really love Amy or you really cannot stand Amy. Is from what I've gotten from my friends.
Jeff, what face are you making?
That is a good face.
It's an I love Amy face.
Which is totally fair.
Yeah.
So.
I also want to, I like Peter Capaldi. I remember liking Peter Capaldi because I was becoming more and more aware of how Matt Smith and David Tennant had this reputation of being handsome and cute. And I was like, oh, they're bringing this old prickly guy in. So I remember being charmed by that.
And they let him use his Scottish accent.
And he can be very eloquent when he wants. I had never really seen him get to be silly until this. He had some good silly moments.
This is another thing that you have to understand if you aren't, somebody who watches a lot of British TV, is that appearing on Doctor Who is like jury duty for British actors.
Yeah, it really is.
Kind of the same way that Law and Order is in the States, and except like better. So I mean, David Tennant was a noted Shakespearean actor by the time Peter Capaldi did like Lair of the White Worm and that one show where he swears a lot. And like Jodie Whittaker had done Broadchurch. And people will pop up. I mean, quite famously, like Peter Capaldi was in an episode of the 4th season. Before this happens, he happens, and which actually, what's her name? Karen Gillan, who plays Amy, was in the same episode as a minor character. This happens all the time. It's people who play minor characters get brought back. Freema, who plays Martha, did similar.
She played like her cousin, I think.
Something. Yeah, they were like,
it
we
was
have
something
to
ridiculous.
hand wave that.
With the exception of the brooding, oh my god, I'm the last one alive, 9th Doctor, dark, Christopher. 10, 11, and 12 all have varying degrees of kind of excitability.
Yeah,
that's true.
And I'm just wondering, were they just dialing the volume too rampantly because Matt Smith has that like famous scene where he's like yelling up at a spaceship. Like
that's a really good scene, though.
It's a really good scene, isn't it?
Yeah.
See, the thing that I like about all of them is they all feel like they're in various stages of some kind of nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
There you go.
So and so much of
that mad scientist
of the
quality,
show,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So much of the show is, is the Doctor having a moment where he's like, nothing matters. but this is the reason he has his companions, is because they're like,
a guardrail.
Stop being an idiot. They're a guardrail, but they're a guardrail that, especially if they're Donna, is going to tell him he's being stupid.
They're a good grounding force.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our favorite and I guess least favorite companion. So let's finish that conversation before Amy. So Amy,
let me just jump in and say,
yes,
that Amy's mostly only my favorite just because I really like Karen Gillan as an actor.
Fair enough.
She's
in
good.
general.
She is.
So
She's
I
a
love
very
Amy.
good actress.
I love the writing around Amy. I don't love her as a companion because Amy's best quality to me is that she comes with Rory, and Rory is incredible.
Rory is great.
I just
Arthur
don't
Darvill.
like how she treats Rory, especially early on.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
And that
valid.
just drives me too nuts that I just kind of write her off. Now, I love most of the episodes she's in, so it's not something that like pushes me away from the show, but yeah.
I enjoy that actually because I'm like, oh, I do think that the person who travels with the Doctor sometimes, like even like Rose, who I adore, Russell T Davies very purposefully writes her at the beginning of her arc as this like kind of casually homophobic in the way that 19-year-olds in 2005 Britain were. And you see her travel the universe and it's subtle. It's not like this after school special kind of thing. But eventually she's like, oh, like you see that fall away.
Yes.
And so I like, and you see Amy fall more and more in love with Rory as the their seasons go on. My favorite companion is hands down Donna. Like hands down,
Same.
no contest, no exception.
You can't beat
And
Donna.
not just because that partnership eventually gave us the Tennant and Tate Much Ado About Nothing.
Yeah.
Arguably the best production of Much Ado About Nothing of our time, which is saying a lot. I've seen a lot of Much Ado's About Nothing.
Yeah. Donna was so interesting too because her first appearance was so painful. It was that
special,
Christmas
oh
special
God.
where
She was supposed to be a one-off.
Yeah.
Everyone
She
adored
was.
her.
Yeah,
was
we gotta have
sassy.
Catherine Tate back. So
And the thing that I adore that Catherine Tate knew nothing about Doctor Who coming in, knows nothing about Doctor Who to this day, excepting the episodes she's been in.
Yep.
I'm not convinced she's seen a single episode.
yeah.
And that is, I love her.
Yeah,
I
more
love
power to her.
She is my absolute favorite as well. And part of it is after coming after both Rose and Martha, where both of them had a very much I am in love with the Doctor arc. Finally having somebody that was just going to be a friend to the Doctor. that
Well,
could
you're
tell
not
him-
mating with me, sunshine.
Yes, exactly. And she is not afraid to call him out when he is taking things too far. I love how sarcastic she is.
I once heard someone say that, like, on the one hand, while I would love to see Donna travel with 9, the bitch levels would be just off the chart. They would ripple across the universe. Everyone would be like, they're here. Because they both give such exquisite side eye. I don't think the universe could have contained it.
Yeah, the snark would be too much. No one could contain that.
My least favorite companion, that's like hard to answer because I guess I would say it was easiest for me to stop watching with Clara. Like I didn't care enough about her storyline to be like, no, but what happens to Clara?
Yeah, that's fair.
But I'm gonna finish it eventually. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It might be the same with me with Clara. I was also confused at getting on board at this random time when there was this moment of companions sort of falling in love with them. And I, without learning more about the show, I was like, oh, does that happen every time?
no,
Right.
I think it's very rare that it happens.
Right.
A with Rose at all, and B immediately right after with Martha. Martha's a fabulous character, and I think she gets her due from the show. She doesn't get her due from the Doctor, which again, fascinating dynamic and something that I enjoy watching. Like I like being able to sit there and being like, oh, I love the Doctor, but Ten's bastard.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah,
I loved
he did
going
Martha dirty.
Yeah, I loved going from Rose to Martha, where you had Rose who's just like ordinary young teenager, older teenager, whatever.
Yeah.
But then going to Martha, who's like a literal doctor, and
Right.
like is very intelligent and is very quick, and so that was very cool to see.
No matter how I end up feeling about them, that is one of the most interesting things about the show is just the dynamic and how is it going to go and how are they going to react and how are they going to get along or not.
Right.
So,
That's what I really liked about Rose with Eccleston. Those two played off each other so well. Like that was such a good interaction. You get like this very young, kind of energetic woman from, modern England with this very crotchety, war-hardened alien.
Who's 900 years old.
Yeah, and just the dynamic and the growth that you get out of Rose.
Yeah.
Because of all of the traveling. I love it. And then obviously, again, Donna, you can't beat Donna. Her growth and progression through everything is so great. I don't know if I really have a least favorite. Like, Amy, again, never really did a ton for me. I, again, think she's a casualty of the writing, but fabulous actress. Again, she worked with what she was given.
Well, and I think that one of Stephen Moffat's unfortunate tendencies...
is that the first name his name has been uttered so far in this episode?
No, I think Damon gave one mention.
Yeah.
I think part of I enjoy a companion the more kind of aggressively normal they are. So when I started watching Doctor Who, I was in high school. I was living in a city, but going to a suburban high school that felt very detached from real life. It felt very insular. It felt very petty in some ways. It was small. And I had all these dreams about like going really far away for college, which I didn't end up doing. I ended up just going to college in the city, which made me very happy and was exactly what I wanted to do. But I would watch Doctor Who, and it was this really great mental escape because it was like, oh my God, look at all the adventures I'm going to have as soon as I am like done with high school.
Yeah.
And so I really, really liked the really ordinary companions, Rose being like, she works in a shop.
Yeah.
Donna thinks she is the least important person alive because she's a temp from Chiswick.
Yeah.
And she's the most important person alive.
She is.
And not even despite the fact that she's a temp from Chiswick.
Yeah.
And so that really, really, I like took that to heart. And the thing about like Amy and Rory is like they are less grounded. Like Rose is going home to her mom all the time.
Yeah.
You see Martha's got a whole family. Martha's got a brother and a sister. You see Donna go home to her mother and her grandfather Wilf. Like and the Doctor gets, to an extent involved in all of their lives in a way that is not true for Matt Smith with any of his companions.
Yeah.
And so like I think you don't even really learn that Clara's a school teacher until like Peter Capaldi or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's where some of the less investment for me came in, is that I'm like, well, I don't have as much of a sense of who these people are going to be without the Doctor. And that's because Stephen Moffat suffers from terminal, my guy has to be the specialist guy disease.
Yeah.
As opposed to the fact that like the original lore of the Doctor is that he like stole effectively a time-traveling car, but a jankety time-traveling car that he is not good at driving.
Yeah.
And so while all of these humans are like, oh my God, the Doctor, he's amazing. He's coming to save Earth. Other Time Lords are like, Jesus Christ. Or
Not him again.
Not him again.
Not him again.
This guy, this one. So I like anything that reminds us that before the Time War, the Doctor was just some guy.
Yep.
I like my stories about just some guy, so I like when companions are also just some guy, gender neutral.
Yep.
Totally fair. How about we talk about some standout episodes for you and what you liked about them? And actually, probably part of this question too, maybe not, but where would you recommend people start if they've never watched Doctor Who before? So I can start. For instance, one of my absolute favorite episodes is one that maybe will come up with some of you, and it's Blink. Blink is that famous episode, the first one in the revival with the Weeping Angels, rather. And it is considered to be a Doctor Light episode, meaning that the Doctor is he's in there in the background into videos and stuff. He's not really in the episode much at all. And so for that, not only is it a very good writing, very compelling, it is a Stephen Moffat episode, but it's one of those that even if you have no Doctor Who knowledge, you can still watch it and have a good time with it. And so it's one that I'd recommend to somebody just right off the bat, because especially if they're not going, oh, I can commit to watching a season of this. Like I can commit to watching an episode of this. Yeah. Here you go. I'm going to give you a good one. Otherwise, start with Rose, because Rose is,
That's exactly what my answer would have been. Would have been like, well, obviously start with Rose, but you could also absolutely start with Blink. Yeah, during the David Tennant years, there would usually be one episode where he wasn't in it very much, or there would be a bottle episode.
Yeah.
And this is partially because the BBC loves to cut costs for things, understandably. They only had the budget for that show of My High School Drama Club. So I've already mentioned one of my favorite episodes is the two-parter Are You My Mummy? And the Doctor dances. Just because, and I don't want to spoil it for people because it's a really, really good two-parter, but just this once Rose, Everybody Lives gets me every single time.
So
and the thing
good.
about that's also a Stephen Moffat episode, and the thing is there's like a 2.5 hour video essay by H. Bomber Guy on YouTube about why Sherlock is bad, but also why we all thought it was good when it first aired, which made me feel a lot better about myself. But it's mostly about Stephen Moffat and the problems thereof. And this guy makes the point that Stephen Moffat is good when he has someone to rein him in and tell him no.
Yeah.
Which is why he writes amazing episodes when Russell T Davies is running the show. And the minute you hand Stephen Moffat the keys to that gar, bad things happen. And
just run off the rails.
Nobody to say, can we not be quite so much of a misogynist, Stephen? He's the only person I've seen who I would consider a trans-inclusive radical misogynist, which is that he thinks trans women are women and you should respect everyone's pronouns. He just doesn't like women that much. It's very terrible news. The worst person you know just made a great point. I'm
dying over here.
Just a little bit.
But I think my other personal favorite episode is I forget the Unicorn and the Wasp. Which
that
is
was so
is
good.
another fairly decent standalone where you don't have to have a lot of backstory. I love the historic episodes. So that's a historic episode where the 10th Doctor and Donna go to a house party and Agatha Christie is there.
Yes.
And it's a great just like Doctor and Donna buddy comedy mystery solving.
Where he's poisoned and just her.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good.
It's one where they're doing charades about salt. And also Agatha Christie is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many Agatha Christie titles of books hidden in that episode, in the dialogue everywhere.
So
I'm not even a big Agatha Christie buff or anything, but I still caught a few of them. It's fantastic.
The history episodes are really some of my favorite. Like the one episode where Ten and Martha are back in Shakespearean England.
Yes.
And just how many Shakespearean theory or Shakespearean scholars just fist pumped.
57 academics just punched the air.
Thank you.
Is there something there though? There's something about the Christie and mystery and Conan Doyle.
Well, they also have a
and
really, really
Sherlock.
good one with Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens Ghosts at Christmas.
Yeah.
In the first season, I think my favorite genre of Doctor Who episode is go back in time, meet famous authors.
Yeah, it's really fun. Or just back in time, meet famous, whatever.
Yeah.
That's funny. My other favorite episode is inspired by Charles Dickens, and it's the one titled A Christmas Carol, which did not include Charles Dickens, but it is loosely based on A Christmas Carol and has magical flying fish, and
it's a decent
great.
episode.
Yeah. I tend to love time travel shenanigans, which I mean the whole show is about.
Yeah.
But both Blink and A Christmas Carol have within the episode timeline manipulation stuff that is really interesting to me.
I don't have anything else original to add. I told you all I like David Tennant, and I also like Blink. We've already talked about
Blink
it.
was really good.
I like its atmosphere. I like that it has a little bit of a touch of horror to it, or uneasiness. And I like that you get to meet a young Carey Mulligan.
Yeah. Well, again, jury duty.
Jury duty for Carey Mulligan coming over to Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
for me, one of my favorite historical ones, and just in general, is The Girl in the Fireplace.
Ooh, yes.
Interesting. I hate that episode.
Really?
Yes.
What?
The horse
It's because
is
Stephen Moffat's I've got to have my guy flirt with the most famous mistress of Louis XV.
Yeah, that's fair.
When Rose is standing right there
there.
and they are in love.
I don't know. That was I don't remember why it grabbed me as much as it did, because it's not the best writing at all, but that just, I think I really liked the clockwork mechanism because it was such an interesting villain for that one.
That's fair.
Plus, I mean, I'm a sucker for a good costume, even if the costumes aren't
That's
that
also
great.
fair.
Because I mean, they weren't that great.
Other favorite historical episode highlights for me are Fires of Pompeii, which includes the great phrase, Donna, human, no. And the Tooth and Claw, which is the werewolf one.
Yes.
The royal family, they're werewolves. Oh my God, is that where Kate Middleton is? Has she become a werewolf?
Topical.
I'm not recalling that one.
Yeah, it's
That
got
was
Queen Victoria.
spectacular.
It's the one where you look at it and you say to yourself, Ten and Rose weren't sleeping together in between episodes. All this is a family show. But they were.
Yeah.
You watch that episode and you're like,
Queen
okay, guys. And they have this bet about getting Queen Victoria to say we are not amused. At one point, David Tennant does what he is now most famous accent-wise for doing, which is a bad version of his own accent. For folks who don't know, David Tennant is Scottish. He has a Scottish accent. In the mid-noughts, because the English suck, he had to use an estuary accent on TV all the time. But we grow, we learn. Now he's allowed to be Scottish on Maine. They let Peter Capaldi be Scottish on Maine, and I hope they let Shudigatwa. Have they let Shudigatwa be Scottish on Maine?
I don't know.
I have not actually watched any of it yet.
Because his natural accent's Scottish.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Another good historical one, and again, like Matt Smith may not be my favorite, but has one of my favorite episodes was Vincent and the Doctor.
Oh my God! How could I forget about Vincent and the Doctor?
Good episode,
which is another really good one if you're trying to convince your friend to look past the plastic automatons in rows.
Yes.
Absolutely.
To Vincent the Doctor, and like this is so basic of me, but there was that really fabulous Van Gogh exhibition at the DIA last year, and I went by myself. I walked around, and I was like, Bill Nye is going to be around one of these corners.
You can just hear him in the back.
Yeah.
British actor, jury duty. Bill Nye has a beautiful cameo as an art curator. It's about Vincent van Gogh, and it is a gorgeous, gorgeous episode. That's also a lot of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who are about grief.
Yes.
It is in
Very
many,
much
many,
so.
many ways a show about grief.
Well,
Yeah.
Sure. It's also a lonely character.
That's
absolutely.
It's about grief, but it's also about love.
Yeah.
And that's
Watch
all
Vincent and the Doctor.
very, very, very
Good
intentional.
episode.
Yeah, Vincent and the Doctor is also a great episode to recommend somebody to watch as their first
absolutely.
episode. Just because it's not super connected to everything else going
Yeah.
around it. And
You can definitely watch it as a standalone.
Honestly, I like when Doctor Who goes Monster of the Week.
Yeah.
I enjoy Russell T Davies in the early, the showrunner in the early seasons. Like there are plot arcs. There are these little things that are sort of dropped throughout the season, and then they usually culminate in like a 2-part finale.
Yeah.
But it's not. You don't have to have flowcharts and like red string conspiracy boards the way you do when Stephen Moffat's running things.
Yep.
I don't know how Chibnall does. He was running the show during the Jodie Whittaker years.
Yeah.
But I like something just a little bit more simplified. So Russell T Davies has come back for a surprise. So did David Tennant for a surprise David Tennant.
Yeah.
And then Ncuti Gatwa is taking over. Folks may know him as Eric from Sex Education on Netflix. I am stoked.
yes.
I'm very excited to see
very,
where
very
these
excited.
new episodes go.
And-
That was
Sure.
literally why I started catching up again.
Yeah,
was
I
because
know.
I want to see him as a doctor. I want
Yeah.
to see. Oh my goodness, yes.
So I'm interested. Now that Dad's home, and Russell T Davies is back, what Doctor Who going forward is going to look like. I'm so stoked. It's been so great. I've been revisiting it too, Damon. We've been talking about it, and it's been such a joy.
It's so great.
Unlike revisiting Sherlock.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Ben Affleck smoking.jpg.
Satyanu me.
Mary Graham, you did a really good job just rattling off all of the showrunners. And those of you listening, if you're wondering, what is that? That's basically just the head writer for a season.
Yeah.
It's something that didn't happen so much back in the classic days, but in 2005 onward, we always had a showrunner. So Russell T Davies, followed by Stephen Moffat, followed by Chris Chibnall, and then Russell T Davies again.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about Stephen Moffat already and our both love and hatred of him, especially Mary Graham. I will add Stephen Moffat, with all of the problems he has, especially around writing women.
Yeah.
when it comes to convoluted storylines, I kind of love it.
No one's doing it like him.
It's true.
I love him planting pieces of information in every episode that you can sort of string together as it goes along. Or sometimes the reveal happens and you go, I would never have strung that together because that was so obtuse. Like, why did you do that?
True.
I adore things like that. And that is just like, I love that in general as well.
Yeah, it's a matter of taste. And I love that that is there for you because I'm the person who reads mystery novels and people like the golden age of mystery novel. Like there are rules about the idea, you know, that a keen reader should be able to mostly figure it out. I don't care. This is why I love Dorothy Sayers books is because I'm like, look at this 4-book-long slow burn between this amateur detective dumbass who's my love and this mystery writer with a master's degree from Oxford who I myself want to marry. And I'm like, amazing. What there's oh my god, everyone go read the Peter Wimsey books. Jeff, we still have to do a Peter Wimsey episode.
You got it.
But I'm like, oh my god, look at that. Oh, did someone die? Are they gonna figure out how the guy got murdered? Cool, have fun, guys. You know, whereas people are like, exactly, whereas people are like, and then this, and then here, and it's really a locked room mystery, and here's the clue here, and I'm like, oh, they'll tell me at the end. I don't need to pay too hard of attention.
That is totally fair.
Yeah.
I'm the opposite. I love having pieces here and there, and it's part of the reason, like, I am one of those people that still has not quit Marvel, even though it has gone down this path as well with its multiverses and convoluted storylines as well. I'm curious if either of you else have thoughts on the showrunners.
Oh, I was just going to say I like Russell T Davies, but I was just peering around on the internet, and I don't see any love out there from the Who community for Chris Chibnall.
Neither do I.
Oh,
no. I think that I've heard that Jodie is doing a great job as 13, and that there are some good, and also the guy they've got playing the Master with 13, and I'm so sorry I don't know how to pronounce his name. He was on The Great. If you watch The Great on Hulu,
okay.
He was Orlov, and he's the Master. And all I know about his run is that he's apparently fantastic. So the Master, it turns out, there's another Time Lord who escaped the Time War.
Spoiler.
Well, people are gonna be like, "Who's the Master? Who's she talking about?"
I am 100% with you.
And the Master, like the Doctor, regenerates. Time Lord. And so the guy who plays the Master with Jodie Whittaker is apparently fabulous, and also at some point lip syncs to Rah Rah Rasputin by Boney M.
Spectacular.
Which is enough of a reason in and of itself to catch up so that I can go watch that season. So unfortunately, like, I think people looked at Chris Chibnall and said, hey man, he did a great job with Broadchurch, which is true.
Right.
Unfortunately, perhaps writing one of the best murder mystery shows of the modern era does not translate into writing one of the silliest sci-fi shows of the modern era.
Yeah, that's fair.
I actually can't comment because I haven't watched any of his work.
Yeah.
Well, report back though.
Report
back.
Yeah, we'll have to do
Doctor Who
part 2.
Part 2.
After me and
Electric
Mary
Boogaloo.
and anybody else who wants to finish catching up can catch up.
Yeah, I really need to.
Yeah.
I feel like I really want to because I am so curious about the new seasons. And obviously I've heard so much. Like, I haven't watched the new special yet. So I really want to see.
The 60th anniversary.
Yeah.
I only marvelous things that I hear about.
Same.
About that. I am very interested because Ncuti Gat was given some interviews. I mean, as you do when they announce that you're the new Doctor.
Yes.
And he talked about watching Christopher Eccleston's season. And Ncuti Gatwa is moved to Scotland as a very young child as a refugee from Rwanda during the Rwandan genocide. And he talks about watching the first season of the Doctor Who revival and this idea of the Doctor essentially being a refugee who can't go back home. And he was like, that imprinted on me, and I was like, this is my guy. So I'm hoping that something about that is going to be brought into his seasons, because I know that's a thread that he's very interested in.
Well, we haven't talked about this yet, but his first season they're calling as season 1 again.
Oh,
so this is meant
which
to be,
I think is kind of gimmicky, but you can start from
which
15
as a librarian
it
kind of kills me because it's already hard enough to find which
you're
DVDs
not
people
wrong.
want. But that being said, it went from series and now it's seasons. And
That's because they've got Disney money now.
Yep.
That's because they've got American money. And I was really worried that the American money was going to mean the effects started to be good. Based on, I have a lot of internet friends who I met through Doctor Who fandom, and based on folks who've already seen the specials because they are willing to pay for Disney Plus, we're saved, guys. The CGI is not
Yeah.
great. There is CGI, but it's not good. And because it's Doctor Who, that's what we want.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I guess my point being, it being season 1 again, it's meant to be a good launching point for people as well. So if you're listening and going, I've never watched Doctor Who, where do I start? This might be a good place to start too.
Yeah.
That's probably the answer.
Yeah.
Well, we have mostly talked about the show here, but at the library, we also have Doctor Who books, audiobooks, and comics. Most of them are available online as ebooks and e-audiobooks through Hoopla and Libby. Any of the DVDs can be acquired via a hold from another library. And that being said, I wonder if any of you have any recommendations of other things, not Doctor Who, that people might like if they like Doctor Who or they're intrigued by Doctor Who.
So I was literally just something like switch flipped in my brain. I think thinking about Shurigawa. So someday I hope they make a proper adaptation of the Peter Grant series.
Ooh.
And he should play Peter. Give him a few more years. He'll be the right age. And for folks who enjoy some of the historical parts of Doctor Who, Peter Grant is a British sort of mystery series by Ben Aronovich, who actually has written for Doctor Who, so the sensibilities are similar. And I was going to say there's no time travel involved, but actually, thinking about some of the later books, there's certainly interdimensional travel involved. It does skew more fantasy than sci-fi, and that's what I prefer, so I really enjoy it. But basically, Peter Grant is a constable in the Metropolitan Police who finds out that there's a unit assigned to magical crimes, and he gets assigned to the unit investigating magical crimes. And there's a lot of books in this series by now, but it's got first-person narration. The audiobooks are fabulous. Comna Holbrook-Smith narrates them, and they're fun books to read, but they're an absolute treat to listen to. Every time a new book comes out, I start at the beginning and I listen to all of them.
Love it.
All over again.
Very Jim Butcher.
They're all available. They may be on Hoopla. They're definitely on Libby. And a similar sensibility. So if you like that very much sense of adventure, very much cast of companion characters, and a lot of sort of British folk magic, folk history.
That's cool.
Very kind of traditional fairy lore in the whole kind of like, don't eat their food, don't make them any promises. Careful who you tell your name to. I really, really love the Peter Grant books.
That's cool.
I'm gonna go ahead and sneak in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh yeah,
sure.
you can't ignore that one.
I really love that 2007 film with Martin Freeman.
Don't forget your towel.
Don't forget your towel. You might want to check out Everything Everywhere All at Once if you hadn't yet. It did win Best Picture 2 years ago. And also, Damon mentioned Marvel. How about Loki? I think Loki was really great.
Loki was great.
Yeah, especially with the timeline stuff.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense.
That was such a good series.
I also really loved Miss Marvel. I'm not even saying
too.
that it's like
so
necessarily
I still
good.
haven't seen it
that
yet.
connected to Doctor Who, but I haven't cared about Marvel since circa 2014.
Yeah, it's
Great.
been a while.
And I got lovingly arm twisted into watching Miss Marvel.
Great.
Oh my God, watch it. It's so good.
Yes.
I'll have to pick it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Marvels, if you haven't seen the movie yet, is also fantastic.
Also great.
Okay.
Very
Good to
cool.
know.
Yeah. For me, as I already mentioned, I really like when storylines are extra complicated and convoluted for no other reasons than they can be. So, Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, which is multiple series of books that are all interconnected, more or less.
Cool.
You can read them each standalone. You can read them all together and get more out of them, but I think that's great. Also, we have video games at the library,
Yeah, we
and another series that has that kind of starts off simple but then gets convoluted very quickly is Kingdom Hearts, which you would not expect because it's Disney characters and it is Final Fantasy characters, but they mash up together and make weird stories, and it's wonderful.
Nice.
Assassin's Creed, if you want a really convoluted one, because they can't make up their minds. Plus, you get all that delicious back in time nonsense.
I
It's
was going to
so
say, are
good.
there like a gajillion Assassin's Creed and they all take place in different...
Oh, yeah. You've got Italian Renaissance from the Assassin's Creed 2 and from Brotherhood. And then you have, American War for Independence. You have pirates. You have ancient Greece.
I think you have Vikings at
You
some
do
point?
have Vikings. You get everything. It's It's ridiculous. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's fun to play through.
Well, Damon, I think you found the outro. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Go watch Doctor Who, everyone. You can borrow the DVDs from your local library.
Yes, I finally returned them. You can have them now.
Well, yes. And that being said, thank you to all of you for listening to another episode of A Little Too Quiet, the Ferndale Library podcast, which is brought to you by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. We also thank John Duffy for giving us music to open and close each episode. If you want to find out more about supporting this podcast, visit ferndalefriends.org. Please remember also to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you leave us a positive review, we can find more listeners. We'll be back next week with more. Thanks again for listening.